Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, CIBC Wood Gundy's Ross Clark looks at the major movers on the markets. Mauldin Economics' John Mauldin is optimistic the Trump administration will be good for business. He also gives us his economic predictions for the new year. Mackie Research's Payton Nyquvest runs down the action on Canada's equity markets. And we'll end our show with Company Showcase with Larry Reaugh. We'll talk to Ross Clark right after this.
I'm Larry Reaugh, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, AMY, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Reaugh, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
Our guest is Ross Clark, investment advisor at CIBC Wood Gundy in Vancouver. Welcome back to This Week in Money, Ross.
Nice to be with you, Jim.
The U.S. equity markets hitting all-time highs. What's the story behind that?
Right across the board, ever since the election, we've seen the market with an upside bias. Had a little bit of a pause early in the week, but as we had mentioned last week, being Thanksgiving in the U.S., the day before and the day after tend to have good upside action, and this year was true to form. Closed off the week, as you say, whether it was the Dow, the S&P, the small cap Russell index, they're all at all-time highs at this point. We'd be hoping for a little bit more follow-through next week, but between here and the middle of December, we would expect that you get your normal correction. So, if the market, we've got the Dow sitting at about 19,100, and it looks as though if we take a look at the trading range that it's broken out of, we've got two targets, up one at 19.4 and the other at 19,900. Might get maybe a 5 or 6% correction from one of those, but then look for a good positive bias as we move then into the turn of the year, which has historically been one of the best times of the year. Not just, that we're part of the good 6 months taking us from October out until May, but this window from the middle of December is one that has really done exceptionally well. Even last year when it had that pickup in the mid-December and a good bounce into January, it did well.
The Trump effect has also brought the U.S. dollar up, hasn't it?
Oh, it has, and part of this is interest rates. The thought being that QE, might clearly be behind us because of the pressures from this administration over to the Fed. So, bond market, which had its really hard break into a week ago, this following week it gave up maybe another point or so. So we've got the 10-year yields up around 238. They had been in the mid, I guess it was 135 to 140 in the summer. So it's been a dramatic increase in rates, and that has been a real boom for the U.S. dollar. We've got the dollar index being up close to 102. This had been at 93.5, not all that many months ago. So you can see that the dollar's tacked on a good 8 or 9%. Now, normally, when we look at our long-term cycle, our 16, 17-year cycle on the dollar index, we're in a positive bias here. We should be right through 2017. But the breakout that we've just had to multi-year highs as of this last couple of weeks, usually you'll have a bit of a pause here. You make new highs, you stay up here for 2 to 3 weeks, have a minor pullback, and then have a secondary run. So we think by the time we're pushing in through the end of the second quarter, you're probably looking at another 10 to 15% on the upside as far as the U.S. dollar is concerned.
Does that mean Canadians should be buying U.S. dollars to give themselves some protection?
Well, yeah, we've been an advocate here of just that for many, many months. Clearly, the U.S. dollar is strong unto itself, but we look at the Canadian dollar. The Canadians from a trade perspective and, negotiations and all that might be on the horizons, you have to question, how much support we can have. Once again, this was a week where the oil market, which Canadians have to be cognizant here of us being such a resource-based economy, the oil market had rallied nicely up to back to $49, and it tailed off at the end of the week. But in that rally, once again, the Canadian dollar was a very bad underperformer on the rally. So you still have to think that the bias for the Canadian continues to be down.
What's happening with gold?
Well, the reciprocal action that you've seen in the dollar. Gold, they managed to, they like to take out round numbers. So a week ago when it was sitting in the 1205 to 1210, it was pretty ominous that, they would go down and at least clean out stops underneath 1200. We got to 1172 overnight there on Thursday night, Friday. And I feel, you probably get a bit of a bounce if the dollar were to consolidate a little bit and pull back. But I think overall the scenario that we're working with is that gold will not really be ready to base out until we get out to January, February. And that would be the norm too, not only just of that longer term cycle, but if you take a look at the first year in the president's term, that January, February is a good time to be looking for bottoms.
Oil?
Oil, upside bias at this point, supports at 42, resistance 49. I still think probably more of a trading range, but with a bit of an upside bias to it. Probably, even though you would think that the oil would stay down because of the strength overall in the U.S. dollar, when we look at the longer-term picture, strength in the dollar and oil at this point together would be the norm for the next 6 to 12 months. So if the economy starts to strengthen a little bit here, who knows? We could be looking at oil finding not just a lid at 50. Maybe eventually we could end up with a bit of a floor up there.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Good to be with you, Jim.
My guest has been Ross Clark, investment advisor at CIBC Wood Gundy, Vancouver. Coming up, John Mauldin, next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
My guest is John Mauldin, founder of Mauldin Economics. You can find it online at mauldin.economics.com. He's speaking to us from Dallas, Texas. John, welcome back to This Week in Money and hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Well, I did. Thank you very much.
We'd like to get some of your predictions for the new year, but first, your November 20th issue of Thoughts from the Frontline was titled, What Should Trump Do? Have you received any feedback on your article from the Trump transition team?
Oh, well, the answer is I've talked with them over the time, but other than, well, these are interesting ideas. But I've known some of these guys on the transition team for a long time, so we've been discussing this a long time. But I was just using the letter as an occasion to get everything out in one place.
Are you optimistic they'll do a good job?
I actually am. I mean, a lot of people are pessimistic and wondering, but if you look at Trump's modus operandi, he appoints good people and he gives them room. He has a vision that this is what we're going to do, and and then moves on down the road. So I am not in that group of people that think that somehow or another he's going to take the country in some far right-wing lurch. I mean, is he going to take it in a new direction? Well, yes, but that was precisely what the vote was about. There are a lot of people wanting a new direction, so that shouldn't surprise anybody.
Also, I think Mr. Trump is a person who likes to be successful. He doesn't want to go down in history as a poor president, does he?
Well, nobody wants to. I mean, what he's, if you look at who he's considering and who he's been appointing, these are not, they're not rookies. They're not people that have just come to the table. These are thoughtful, on top of it, got their act together people. I mean, all in all, I've been pretty pleased with who he's put on his transition team.
Is that the way he usually runs things, finds the best people possible, and as you said, gives them room to run?
Well, that's what he's done in his business. So, and if you talk to the people who work with him in his business, they all think he's a marvelous manager. They're all happy with him. So, the people who work with him day to day. So I'm not pessimistic about what I think we're going to see.
Do you think Mr. Trump will be a good neighbor for Canada?
Yes. I mean, is he going to bring up a few things in NAFTA? Sure. NAFTA's 20 years old. There's no agreement, no trade agreement, no anything you can do that's going to address the reality on the ground 20 years later. So, do both sides probably need to update it some? Absolutely. How will that go about? Well, I mean, that's what negotiations are about, and I would expect them to be they'll be interesting. I guess you could put it that way. But I don't expect anything really drastic or that people are going to be going, our lives are ended or things like all of this dire stuff that you keep reading and hearing about.
We hear that Mr. Trump is pro Keystone XL pipeline. That's good news for Alberta's energy industry, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, and this is one of those things that I have never understood why it wasn't done to begin with. I mean, well, other than the fact that Obama just wanted to give his friends in the environmental world that they don't want any gas, oil, anything that's not renewable energy built for anything. And so, I mean, that's just not a realistic policy for us as a race, as a country. We have to have energy. And they had their way. Our energy would end up costing us 5 times more, and we'd all be using less of it. And, how we're going to power our phones and the computers and all the, the cool toys and our electric cars and all the other things that they think somehow just this electricity just magically appears. We're going to need natural gas for a very long time. I'm not even convinced that electric cars are going to be the absolute end result of the future. We may be seeing fusion. So, but there's definitely going to be some transition.
GDP growth and debt growth in the U.S., what are they now, and where do you see them going?
Well, I mean, we're at what I call stall speed. We're not growing very fast, and I don't see them picking up a great deal in the first 2 quarters. I mean, there's nothing Trump can do really in the first 2 quarters. I mean, you might get some bills passed, okay? But you've still got to get them implemented. You've got to see those changes coming. If you do tax cuts and you do some phenomenal things, it takes a long time to get them implemented and the tax process going and the new forms done. It's not you punch a button and things start happening. So I don't see a lot of the world changing quickly, but it will start the process, and that's what you should be doing. And so I'm optimistic about that.
What should Trump do for corporate taxes?
Well, I think you should take corporate taxes to 15% on profits, just normal, accounting figured profits, and get rid of every one of the, I think it's something like 3,400 different congressional mandated loopholes for this industry and that industry. And at some point, you just have to say that's enough. And if you make the taxes low enough, then it's not hurting anybody when you take away their tax preference. They call it a tax preference as opposed to a loophole. But whatever you want to call it, those things need to change, and I would take away every one of them.
In Canada, when they cut corporate taxes, government revenues went up. Do you expect the same thing in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. If we cut our corporate taxes to a flat 15% over $100,000, no deductions for any. Just all the congressional mandates go away. Now, a lot of lobbyists are going to hate that because that's how they make their living, which is, shepherding and attending those corporate loopholes. But I think our taxes would go up immediately.
Is that part of the so-called draining of the swamp?
The swamp to me, yeah, that could be a part of it. The swamp to me would be all this lobbyist stuff and everybody trying to get tax loopholes and regulations to make their industry into favor where you end up favoring one group over another, and the federal government shouldn't be in the business of picking winners and losers. So I would be happy to see all of those go away.
What about personal income taxes?
I would like to see personal income taxes drop to the 15-20% range, but at the same time, we've got to pay for all of our health care and wealth and other things that we're doing in the United States. So I would say that we probably have to institute a BAT, which you in Canada are quite familiar with. Not a high one, but enough to pay for our Social Security and our health care.
What role does the velocity of money play in inflation?
Well, the velocity of money is very key for inflation. And the velocity of money is still falling. The velocity of money, given the demographics of the world, given the technological shifts that we're making things we're making more things. We're becoming more productive on average across a wide number of industries. I think we're probably, you could see bouts of inflation and higher inflation here and there, but it's not going to be the dominant theme. The dominant theme over the next 10, 15, 20 years is still going to be a deflationary direction.
What's going to be the main driver behind that?
Just increased productivity. The world is aging in the developed world. Now, you'll see, you may see inflation and other things in a lot of developed world countries where they have the right demographics. Look at China, not China, look at Japan. It's a country that's literally shrinking, it's literally dying, and one of the things we know about is that people who are older spend less. They're living on their savings. They're not being as productive. And, as more and more people fall into that category, you lose that impulse, that acquisition. Japan has printed the equivalent of 100% of their GDP of bonds and monetized that debt, and yet it hasn't created any inflation at all. And kind of standard monetary theory says, man, we should be seeing inflation everywhere and always, and it's just not happening. So it's going to be a lot harder for them to create inflation than they would like us all to think. So,
is the lesson from Japan is you should allow immigration, but make sure you control it, and it's the kind of people that you want to grow your economy?
Oh, I think that makes sense. I don't know that it's the lesson from Japan. Japan is a particularly difficult country in that they're really not very welcoming to foreigners. If I could wave a wand and say, okay, we're going to change our immigration laws in the United States, but you have to pick somebody else's to emulate, I'd say, okay, fine, I want Canada's. You guys have, to me, I think, a great immigration policy. And I would love to see something like Canada's immigration policy adopted here in the U.S.
Is the underlying U.S. economy as strong as some numbers suggest?
The answer is no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know what numbers are you referring to?
Well, it seems to me one day you'll get a positive indication from some industry or sector, and then the next day there's a negative one. It's hard to tell which direction the U.S. economy is going right now.
Well, I think that's why we're in a 1.5 to 2% slow growth world at stall speed. There's nothing out there that's making you think that we're hitting on all 8 cylinders, and there's nothing but clear skies and an open runway in front of us. There's a lot to be done.
Would a federal value-added tax in the U.S. sync up with state sales taxes?
You would have to do something to make sure that they don't overlap and don't create a problem. But yes.
How should spending on infrastructure be funded? Would some of the costs be offloaded to states, counties, and cities?
I would like to see it almost, what I would like to see is, in the U.S. we have something called a Ginnie Mae bond, which is a government-guaranteed mortgage bond. That so individuals, if they qualify for a Ginnie Mae bond, they can buy get a loan, goes into the Ginnie Mae pool. Their interest rates are cheaper. I would like to see something like that for the states and cities and counties, where they can buy a U.S. government-guaranteed infrastructure bond for whatever their local infrastructure needs are. They have to pay the bonds, but that's going to save them 2 to 3% on their interest rate costs. And I think that would be a really good, useful way to use the credit of the United States without having to obligate the United States to spend a great deal of money on infrastructure, when, in fact, right now we don't have a great deal of money. I mean, believe it or not, we're beginning to run to the end of our ability to fund everything. So we've got to sit and be very careful about what it is that we want to fund and how do we want to go about doing it. So.
Right, you don't want to be building freeways and bridges to nowhere like some countries do to boost their economy.
Well, and like Japan did, and it turns out it doesn't boost your economy very well.
Right, what good is a toll road if nobody uses it?
Right.
Do you feel there's more optimism in the business community in the U.S. now with the election of Mr. Trump?
Well, I mean, I think you certainly have to say so. When you look at the stock markets, when you look at a lot of markets, people do seem to feel better, and that's the way they're reacting. So, I mean, as I wrote last week and I'm writing again this week, we have to, as investors, remember that when he was elected, nothing really changed. I mean, we didn't magically shift to a growth mode. All of a sudden, 5% more people are employed. Trade goods went up. I mean, it's the same reality that was there the day before election is still there. Now, it's a reality that's going to change in different ways. That's good. But we have to recognize that it's going to take some time to turn anything around.
Should the power to print money be taken away from the privately controlled Fed and returned to the government?
No. Well, I mean, technically, the government always has that. So, I mean, it's not really a privately controlled Fed. It's run by the U.S. government. It's audited. I mean, if I was going to change something, I would limit the mandate of the Fed. Right now, they're supposed to be, responsible for full employment, and that's just not something monetary policy does. I mean, so they are messing around with the interest rates and doing all sorts of things to do things that monetary policy is really not designed to do. What I would like to do is see them responsible for maintaining the value of the dollar. Maintaining the value of the buying power of the dollar, and that's it. And being there in moments of crisis to provide liquidity. Other than that, let the market decide what the rate should be, and Congress should take up and be responsible for fiscal policy and employment and those types of things. And the politicians want to say, well, let's let the central bank do it, and without really giving them the tools. They ascribe these magical powers to central banks, and yeah, they can make asset prices go up in terms of stocks or homes or something like that, but that doesn't help a little guy on the street.
How does the government or the president appoint the Federal Board of Governors when the Fed is not owned by the government?
Well, I mean, he has the right to appoint the seven governors. They're all, in fact, two will be appointed by Vice President-elect Trump in a very short order. Then two more will be resigning within a year. So he'll have 4 of the 7 governors. I would expect 1 or 2 would leave anyway. A Federal Reserve governor doesn't make a whole lot of money, and when they leave, they get to be on, the boards of very large corporations and make a lot of money. I mean, being a Fed governor is glamorous, but it's not particularly where a lot of people would want to end up for the rest of their lives. So I would think that you're going to see more changeover. I mean, Trump may get the opportunity to appoint a lot of people. So and so you could end up with a radically different looking Federal Reserve within 2 years, 3 years.
We'll have more with John Mauldin next on This Week in Money.
I'm Larry Reaugh, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, AMY, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Reaugh, at 778-574-4444.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with John Mauldin, founder of Mauldin Economics. He's speaking to us from Dallas, Texas. John, now that it seems that there's a new attitude with the U.S. government, do you see relationships with other countries changing with the U.S.?
Well, they always change. I mean, the countries themselves are changing. I mean, I think when we look at Europe, I mean, who's Europe these days? We don't know. I mean, when you want to pick up the phone to call Europe, who do you pick up the phone to call? I mean, you can call Merkel, you can call, and then Italy's got a real potential chance to blow up here. On December 4th, the Austrians look like they may elect a candidate who wants to put a referendum on whether Austria should stay in the euro. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to be changing, and in the part of that process, our relationship with those people who are changing will change itself. I mean, America will always be a good friend, and I would think that would not change. Does Donald Trump have a point? NATO members are required by the NATO treaty to spend a certain percentage of their revenues on defense, and they're not. None of those countries are, and the United States is having to shoulder all the burden. And at some point, Europe is. I mean, it's no longer 1945 or 1950. At some point, the rest of Europe can they have the money to be able to spend on their own defense without the U.S. taxpayer from Kansas having to pay their fair share. And that's all that Donald Trump said. He didn't say, I want to lead NATO. He says, I want you guys to pay your fair share. Do what you said you would do. That doesn't seem to me to be an unreasonable negotiating stance.
To help control the cost of health care, should natural medicine be welcomed instead of shunned?
Well, I mean, I'm a big proponent of, I guess you'd want to call natural medicine, but so I'm not quite certain where you're going with that question, but the general answer for me would be yes. I would like to see more openness. I would like to see a complete restructuring of the Food and Drug Administration. I don't want to reform it. I want to replace it with a 21st century model that recognizes that we're in a different world. Everything that we're doing now, our world has changed. There's new drugs, there's new medicines, there's new opportunities, and we should be doing everything we can to take advantage of those and get those into the hands of people whose lives it can quite frankly change.
The American populace seems deeply divided. Is that divide likely to heal?
That's a harder question, and it's a harder question. You know, I mean, the glib answer is yes. We always heal. We always come together. But the glib answer is not necessarily the right one right now. What we have is a situation where America, there's a great line from a science fiction writer that said something back in the mid-1990s. He said, the future is already here. He was talking about one of his books. It's just unevenly distributed. And he wrote in the genre that was called cyberpunk that envisions a future of big part of the world, a small part of the world having a lot of the resources and money, and the rest of the world trying to figure out how to make do. And that the benefits of the future weren't as evenly distributed. Well, the future in our world isn't as evenly distributed across the U.S. culture, across European culture, as a lot of people would like. And so they're asking for a more even distribution. And that doesn't mean that they're saying, well, you've got to share your wealth. It says that we've got to figure out how we take care of the opportunities. When if we're going to tell a coal miner, we don't want your, we would like to see less coal used for electricity, we're taking something from him. And we need to make sure that he's just not stuck out in the cold with, no opportunity. So we need to be giving a lot more thought to making sure that as we move rapidly into the future, as we enter an age of transformation, that everybody can be brought along together.
China has announced that it's going to crack down on overseas investments. What does that mean for Canadian and U.S. investors?
I have no idea. They keep announcing one program after another, and then they do something else. So, if you're talking about are they going to crack down on Chinese money coming into the rest of the world? Is that what you're referencing?
Well, I think that's what it is. It's more of their efforts to try to keep more of their money at home, I think.
Well, right now you're seeing a lot of money flee, and that makes it difficult for them to maintain the value of their currency. And if they can't maintain the value of their currency, that means they lose control of the buying power, and they're trying to create an economy that's built on consumers rather than just on exporting and building infrastructure. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And so I would imagine they're going to be going through one set of policies after another, trying to fine-tune it. They've never done this before, so they've always been top-down, and a consumer-oriented society is a bottoms-up society, and that's a really radical revolution for a top-down, strongman, dictator like Xi is. So I would expect we're going to see a lot of interesting policies proposed and adopted over the next 4 or 5 years. And doesn't mean that all of them will be actually implemented.
Does free enterprise in China lead to eventual democratization of the country?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's a good thing when people get control of their own means of production. I mean, that's what happened when they began to allow people to own their own land. Well, all of a sudden, the productivity from that land improved immensely, and the whole allowing people more control, allowing the markets to work, allowing people to build a life, that's always good.
Are you following any new technologies?
Oh, every day, all the time. I'm actually writing a book on what the world will look like in 20 years. That's kind of what's consuming me right now. So, yes, I'm following tons of new technologies.
I know so many science fiction books, predicted smaller computers and so on, but nobody predicted the computer in your own personal mobile phone. I just can't recall.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't want to get into a situation where we're talking arcane science fiction novels to our listeners, and they're going, "What are you talking about?" But the answer is yes. Some people did, but the point is very few businessmen did. I mean, what we're seeing is a major revolution, no question about it.
Where do you think this revolution is going?
Well, I mean, our phones are going to get more powerful. We'll see we'll see a connected world probably by the end of the 20s, into going into the 30s, where we'll actually be tapped in. I mean, physically be thinking at the net around us, asking questions and getting feedback, being able to control an amazing amount of things. Now, are you and I going to do that in our 70s and 80s? Well, maybe, maybe not. But our kids will, absolutely, for sure. I mean, if for nothing else, that's going to allow them to play games faster and bigger, and that's what they do. So, the world is going to be a far more exciting place than what we have today, and I'm actually quite excited about it. Very optimistic about the long-term outcome of humanity. The short term is we're going to have a few bumps in the road because we've got to figure out how to navigate all the debt that we have in the world. I think it's the debt that we have in the world is the single, my biggest single thing that keeps me up at night, if you will.
Is there any solution for this overhanging debt that, yes, affects us personally, nationally, and internationally?
Yes, but I'm not certain how realistic it is to think that we're going to get our hands around it, our heads around it, without having to have some crisis force us into making decisions. And decisions made in crises are rarely all that good. So, but I see that crisis is coming within the next 5, 7, 10 years, maybe sooner. We'll just see. And we'll have a crisis. Now, the U.S. could decide to work towards a balanced budget, do something along the lines of Clinton and Gingrich, what they did in the 90s, and that would solve the problems, and we wouldn't have to have a crisis. We'd just go back to normal, business cycle recessions, which would be a real kind of blessing, if you will, where we could go back to old-fashioned value investing, where we're we just want to look at a company and say, what is the company doing? Is it making money? Do I want to invest in it? Do I think it's got a future? Right now, we have to, look at all sorts of things in order to make our decision, and that's not as much fun, if you will. So.
Should people and governments decide, look, let's just try to live within our means and get off the credit card?
Well, if you're asking me, the answer is yes, of course. But that's an easier said than done proposition. So, could we get forced to do that? Yes.
What are your major predictions for 2017?
I think we're going to have a great deal of volatility coming out of Europe. And we really have to pay attention to the elections that are going along there. And, especially the election in Italy, here in another 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. And if that reform loses, the reform vote, if it's voted down, Renzi will resign. We'll get another government. With that in itself is not a big deal. I think we've had like 4 Italian governments in the last 5 years. But you could end up seeing a real backlash at the same time when Italian banks are just simply going to be collapsing. They don't have enough money. They something like 30% of all of their loans are non-performing loans now. I mean, that's more money than you can possibly imagine. The Italians would have to borrow hundreds and hundreds of billions of euros. They can't do that without the European Central Bank providing credit. That is against the rules. Germany and France don't want to do that. They want to bail it in and make the Italian people take the deposits in their banks and lose part of their deposits, 20, 30, 40% of their deposits, their life savings. Well, the Italian government can't allow that to happen. And it's very possible, if they don't figure out how to create some new rules around the European Central Bank, that Italy would just be forced to leave the European Union. And that is something that is hard for us to contemplate. But that's a real possibility, and that will change everything in 2017. So let's wait and see what happens on that election before we start making predictions about things that we really aren't all that sure of right now.
John, how can people find out more about Mauldin Economics?
Oh, that's the easy part. Just Google John Mauldin. You'll find Mauldin Economics. Put your name in at the upper right-hand corner, and you become one of my 1 million closest friends. So,
John, thank you so much for being on This Week in Money.
You're welcome. Always good to be with you. You guys are fun.
My guest has been John Mauldin, founder of Mauldin Economics. He was speaking to us from Dallas, Texas. Coming up, Payton Nyquvest next on This Week in Money.
GEM International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. GEM International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. My guest is Payton Nyquvest. He's an investment advisor at Mackey Research in Vancouver. Welcome back to the show, Payton.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me.
How did the Canadian equity markets do over the past week?
The TSX had a high of 15,126. Low was 14,928. Closing at 15,075, up about 147 points for the week. The TSX Venture had a high of 753, low was 721, closing at 734, down about 17 points on the week. And the CSC had a high of about 847, low was 785, closing at 809, down 38 points for the week.
The downward trend for gold right now, at least for the price of bullion, how has that affected the venture exchange?
Well, obviously things have cooled off on the mining side of things. I think what's been interesting with a lot of the venture stocks is, gold's had quite a good consolidation here.
The long-term prospect I hear for gold is pretty good. Does that still give us optimism for gold miners in Canada?
Yeah, I think most guys are looking forward to January, and just kind of get everybody getting back to work, and the kind of general consensus is that there's a lot of legs left in the gold market. I think the gold market, especially on the venture side of things, there's a ton of free tradings or ton of financings that were done in the summertime that are all now free trading, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are probably taking profits from that, and so that's obviously been some overhang on the venture market as well.
Also, with our junior gold miners, if they have survived the doldrums the last 4 or 5 years, they're obviously probably in pretty good shape to survive any minor downturn.
Yeah, I think a couple months of downturn is not the end of the world considering what they've been through.
Is efficiency now the name of the game?
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. They want to see these companies run smarter. They're wanting to know where G&A is going and where the money's getting spent. And there's been a lot of focus on that lately.
What about new technology?
Yeah, there's in the gold space, there's been different heap leach technology and stuff like that that's come out, but it's more of I think more in terms of what you can produce for and what you're making.
Are our marijuana stocks still an exciting investment?
Yeah, things have been pretty crazy on that side of things, led by the Canopy Growth guys who used to be Tweed. The trading that's been going on there has been very exciting. I think it's looking a little top heavy now. I think guys are kind of taking a breath. Tweed at one point in time had like a $2 billion market cap. So I think those are starting to come back down to earth a little bit.
And how can people find out more about Mackey Research?
They can visit our website, mackeyresearch.com. There's a lot of information on there.
Payton, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
That wraps up our show for this week. Stand by for a company showcase with CEO and President of American Manganese, Larry Reaugh. We'd like to thank our guests, Ross Clark, Payton Nyquvest, and John Mauldin, and thank you for listening. If you have any questions for This Week in Money, you can email us at info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. We're back next week with more This Week in Money.
Comments made on This Week in Money are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com. This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated. Executive producer is Tom Allen. Welcome to Company Showcase, an advertising feature on HoweStreet.com.
I'm Jim Goddard. We're speaking with Larry Reaugh, CEO and President of American Manganese, on November 22nd. And Larry, I think this is a day you're going to circle on your calendar according to the news release you just sent out.
Well, it's a banner day for the company. We just announced a little over a week ago that we had successfully completed our proof of concept work. And I don't know if people realize what that means, but it means that we have a process for recycling lithium-ion batteries, and as far as we know, nobody else has a working process. Now, it's important that we protect that intellectual property, which protects the company and protects the shareholders, by a patent application. So we've made, because we've now had all the results that we needed, we've made a provisional patent application, and we announced that today. It's a very exciting cornerstone for the company, because now we can move ahead without looking over our shoulders to see if somebody else is going to scoop our technology. That's not going to happen now. And so the shareholders should be happy that the company has proceeded in that regard. And just let me talk a little bit about a patent protection. If you file in the United States, you're protected pretty much in every country around the world for the next year, and you have that time to finalize your patent application. And when you say that, we've done finalization work on lithium cobalt. We know how to get the lithium and the cobalt out, but we haven't done any spec work on the other chemistries that we're going to be looking at, which is nickel and aluminum, and for that matter, manganese, because manganese is a cornerstone. The patent we hold in American Manganese is a cornerstone of this patent, and but it's still has to be included in this patent, right? You can't say, well, it's in the other patent, because that patent was for recovering metals from low grades. And this patent is for recycling. So we got that opportunity now to do that work. And as I mentioned, I may have mentioned that when you're making a patent application, the first thing that the patent attorney does is he does a search to make sure that you're not overlapping with somebody else's patent that may be existing out there. Well, we've done that. and there's nobody in that field that is overlapping with us. And so now we've developed the flow sheets and everything else that we need to have the patent going forward, and we've made the application. So although in the market today it didn't look like it, but the fact of the matter is that this is probably one of the more significant releases we've had, just slightly behind the proof of concept, because we wouldn't be making the application without a proof of concept. But no, it's an interesting time. This allows us to go down to the NAATBatt workshop where we're presenting, and then Norm and Joy will be sitting on a round table there and field questions from the audience on the process, and we don't have to worry about not having covered off the fact that there's a patent pending, or call it, the patent application, the provisional is in. So that helps out in that matter. Some of the more sophisticated investors that I've talked to in the last little while, it's one of the first questions they asked is, are we patent protected? And I said, well, we're working on the proof of concept, and as soon as we have that done, we'll be getting ready to file. And but without that, we don't have a cornerstone on which to file the patent. And now we can say, well, we filed the patent, and we can be a little more liberal with the information that we put out to a group like NAATBatt. And what is NAATBatt? Well, that's a group of people that are interested in the battery industry, including recyclers, and including automotive companies and battery manufacturers. So it's a great conference. It's a great honor for us to have been invited to that conference because we are the only Canadian company presenting down there. And I take the words from the coordinator of this, from NAATBatt, and he basically said, you're the only advanced project we could find out there. And we've been saying that for some time. And, but, who knows what's happening privately in a company or whatever. They may have work ongoing. But we do know that, as far as the public's concerned, we are the answer for recycling the lithium-ion batteries at this time. So that certainly puts us on a leading edge of, maybe bringing on a large partner. And I'd hope that I'd gain some interest down there to do that, or a company that would finance us for some off-take agreements or whatever, to move the company ahead. But it's been a short period of time. It's been extremely busy. And, the shareholders have been, for the most part, are very loyal. There's some that, are not happy because the company hasn't moved up to 70, 80 cents yet. But I can't help that. The markets are the markets, and the value is certainly there to move this company up. But I could, I hardly slept last night waiting for this release to come out, because I feel that, that this date, which is November the 22nd, is highly important in the future of American Manganese. That gives us a lot of security, Jim. People don't realize that you can have a process, but if it's not patentable, anybody can get after it. This process is patentable, and that's probably why there's been no patent applications, because everybody's trying the other methods. But you have to go back a little bit in time and look at what we had done with actually moving ahead with patenting a process for producing from low grade, and I mean low grade, 2% deposits. in the United States and making a competitive electrolytic manganese metal, or EMD, product with our Chinese competitors. So that said and done, there have been companies, including the U.S. government, that worked on this for the last 60 years and had never quite gotten there. And Chemetco is one of the largest research firms in Canada now. With their expertise, we got there, and with their expertise, we moved fairly rapidly through the chute because they're the ones that recognize the chemistries and the potential for recycling batteries, and so we moved pretty quickly to a proof of concept on this. So, the next step will certainly involve more work on the other chemistries that we have, but, and eventually everything has to be pilot tested, and we'll do that. And by that time, before that, I'd like to see us have a partner in that, because that would relieve some of the financial pressure off the company. It's a banner day, and, I think the shareholders should be very excited about the fact that there is a patent pending now, and that nobody can come in the back door and scoop this technology. It's always a fear that you have that somebody's going to take your idea and somehow circumvent you, but that's not the case here. It was a worry, but it's not a major worry because of things that in our original patent that nobody was aware of. So that said and done, Jim, I think the patent filing, which has taken place, is the most important event for the company. That the next milestone is the pilot work, probably, and after that, the first bit of commercial production.
Well, Larry, so many people have talked about the importance of getting batteries into electric cars. You've thought even further about what do we do with those batteries once they're used up?
Well, there's more and more spent batteries coming free all the time. Even with the amount that are coming free now, we could keep several plants going. And we would like the battery industry to come to us as the source for recycling their batteries. Jim, there's a tipping fee that these car manufacturers or battery manufacturers have to pay to a recycler to take these batteries, and that tipping fee is substantial. And eventually we'll talk about that more, when we get some numbers on it and everything else. But we're starting with a product that's 100% pure, and we could produce electrolytic manganese metal out of 2.3% ore deposits back in 2011-12. That was what our pre-feasibility showed at a price of 70 cents a pound. And you're talking about material in here that's worth, I think lithium's worth $16,000 a ton, and cobalt's worth $28,000 a ton, and nickel's worth, $10,000 to $11,000 a ton. The manganese and the aluminum are not worth that much, but they're there, and you can get them out, and that'll probably pay for the cost of processing. But there's money to be made there, and it's a thing that we have to remember is we're going after this because of the environmental aspects, and we're looking at reducing the dependency on ore bodies. Certainly cobalt is extremely vulnerable for that because most of your cobalt comes from byproducts from copper and nickel deposits, and most of those from risky countries. So it's got a double whammy overhang in it, and if you could get that cobalt back and then back to the battery manufacturer, then you can probably eliminate a lot of the pressures that are going to develop in the near future on the demand for cobalt. So I don't know if everybody's really thought about what the potential of this sort of situation is, but the blueprints are out there. People can actually take a look at it and say who would be interested. Obviously, you have your car manufacturers, EV manufacturers, and recyclers that would be interested. But what about the other industries out there that are trying to get involved in the EV car, electric vehicle car industry? They would have some desires and wants in this area, and even oil companies who eventually will be looking more and more to diversify into other energy projects and related projects. An oil company could be your partner. A mining company could be your partner. Or a Google or a Apple or some big tech, even Microsoft, companies with a lot of money that would like to be in an evolving field that has a rapid growth. So I think we've reached a tipping point where EV cars are going to be here with us for probably our foreseeable lives, and the demand for recycling is only going to increase year by year by year, and we would like to keep the environment clean. We'd like to recycle the material, which is always desirable, and I think now we got a free board to an agenda to move ahead.
Larry, where can people find out more about American Manganese, and what are your trading symbols?
Okay, they can go to AmericanManganeseInc.com. You'll see our press releases there. They could phone me at 778-574-4444, or they can just write me a letter if they want. Their address is on the site, and our trading symbol is AMY, AMY.V on the venture, AMY ZF or ZF on the pink sheets in the United States, and in Frankfurt our symbol is 2 a.m. Hell of a time to be going to bed or getting up, but that's where you can get a hold of us.
Larry, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was Larry Reaugh, CEO and President of American Manganese. We were talking on November 22nd. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Company Showcase are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Company Showcase is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.